Hey y'all, thanks for tuning back into Chickanic. I hope everybody's having a great week. Today we are talking primer bulbs because in the last 12 years I have had thousands of customers come in who are on the sole mission to get a primer bulb, and one, they did not know how to install it correctly, or two, they didn't need it at all. So I laid out an assortment today. We're going to go over what you need to buy, what you don't need to buy, how to install it if you do need one, and the reason that you probably don't. Now, I imagine that the majority of customers assume that the primer bulb is their problem because when they go to prime their carburetor, nothing's coming up. Now, these do have little check valves inside of them, just like this one does too, but they never ever go bad. If you are priming your carburetor and nothing is coming up and your primer bulb is not cracked, you have an issue inside your carburetor or with your fuel lines or fuel filter. So I always tell people start with a fuel filter first, then go to your fuel lines and make sure that they're not collapsed. I do see that a lot on the Poulans and the Craftsman trimmers. But if both of those are clear, it's something inside your carburetor and you got to open it up. Either clean it, kit it, or replace. Now, if we're talking two-stroke primer bulbs, there's two different ways that it hooks up. You either have one that's mounted directly onto the carburetor, or you have one that is not on the carburetor and it is a separate piece that is mounted somewhere into the plastic. If it's a four-stroke like a Briggs or a Tecumseh, the designs are pretty much the same. So first off, what you don't need to do. Do not go to the big box store like Lowe's and pay $12 for one of those assortment of 3 primer bulbs when you only need one, and odds are you're never going to use the other 2. Now, when a customer would walk in and say, I need a primer bulb, you think it's pretty simple, right? A primer bulb is a primer bulb. Well, obviously not. There's a lot of different ones that fit a wide assortment of units. So I would ask, what does it go on? Well, it goes on a steel. Well, I could tell you that all the new steels have this primer bulb, but all the old steels had this primer bulb. How old is it? So there's many questions I would have to ask to go through just to find the customer the right bulb. So first off, I want to find out if my customer even needs a primer bulb, because 50% of the time that is not their issue, and I do not want them spending money on a part that they don't even need. So I'll ask, is it broke? Is it cracked? Is it leaking? If it's not doing any 3 of those things, your primer bulb's probably okay. Now to start, we're gonna go over the 3 most commonly seen brands of carburetor on 2-cycle equipment. You either have a Zama carburetor or a Walbro carburetor or a Ruing carburetor. Now, Ruing is sort of like an aftermarket one that makes ones that look exactly like Walbro and exactly like Zama. Now, let's say it is cracked and you gotta replace it. Let's start out with the easy ones first. This is what I call the push-in primer bulb. It has 2 little prongs that go into the plastic housing, and it's got 2 nipples on it for an in and an out, a suck and a blow. When you go to put this one back in, it has a short nipple and a long nipple. And I say short sucks, long blows. When you go to hook it back up, everybody always puts it back in wrong. Because the majority of the time, if your primer bulb's cracked, your fuel lines have rotted too, so you're just not sure which way to go. So to demonstrate how this system works, you'll have your carburetor mounted to your machine. You will have the primer bulb like this, push-in primer bulb, mounted somewhere in the plastic. You have your short nipple and your long nipple. The short nipple fuel line always goes to the carburetor, because a lot of people think it's backwards and it pushes gas in. It actually sucks gas through. So you have one line coming from the fuel filter to one port on your carburetor. You have another line going to the suction on your primer bulb, and then you have the long is the blow one. It returns the fuel back into your tank. So it's just the circle of gas. It just sucks up through your fuel filter, into your carburetor, sucks it into the primer bulb, and then returns it to your tank. Now, these push-in primer bulbs fit a ton of units when it's mounted into the plastic. There's only 2 other instances, and it's extremely rare that you might get the wrong one when you think it's this one. There is Poulan chainsaws that are older, and from the top, it looks exactly the same. And whenever the cover's mounted, because it's right where the rewind pulley is, it sticks out right there, you're not gonna know which one you've got. You've either got the regular push-in primer bulb, or you have this screw mounted one, or it might have prongs in it. And it works exactly the same, except both of the prongs are exactly the same size. So I always know that the one that's offset to the outside is the suck and the center one is the blow. So the suck is always going to the carburetor. There's another one, and I didn't dig it out of my parts, but it has 3 prongs on it, and it came on some like Troy-Bilt trimmer, only one model, and I probably have sold 2 in the last 6 years, so it's not really common at all, but if you have 3 prongs on yours, it is special, but you probably won't see that one. Now, if you have a carburetor with the primer bulb mounted on it, it gets a little bit more difficult because there's 3 different sizes and they're put on everything. Now, the majority though of everything has the big one. When in doubt, go big, because that's probably what you need. So with 3 different sizes, sometimes it's hard to tell because your primer bulb might be this one, but it's swelled up to that size and you don't know, but the bottom diameter is very different. So you'll need to know because it won't mount in your carburetor the same. Now, if you have some more information like what kind of carburetor it is and what's it on, it'll help your shop out a lot getting you the right primer bulb. If it is a Zama carburetor, it's got the big primer bulb. That's an easy one, that's a given. If it's a Walbro, it's a little different. A lot of the Walbro carburetors that went on the Craftsman's, Troy-Bilts, and Poulan's took this medium size, but at the same time, they could have took the small one, and for some reason, they could even take the big one. When it comes to a lot of the older stuff, they all took this Walbro one, but some of the brand new backpack blowers have a Walbro WYL carburetor on it that takes the little one too. So the best thing to do is take it off and take it in with you. Because really, all your shop needs is the base right here. Even if the whole top is gone, if you've got the base, they'll be able to match you up. If it's completely rotted away, take the carburetor. Now, with the Ruing carburetors being sort of like an aftermarket of all the Walbros and Zamas, it can take any of these. You never know. Now, Walbro came out with something that's sort of cool. Finally, I don't know why anybody else doesn't do this or why they haven't thought of this a long time ago, but they actually made a primer bulb out of a different kind of rubber instead of this plastic that deteriorates so quickly. If you're looking for the push-in primer bulb one that'll last you forever, the part number is a 188-570-1. And I'm telling you guys, if you want to just change it once and never have to do it again, that's the way to go. I will leave them in the description box below if you want to get your own. They also have the ones that mount on the carburetor, and I will leave them in the description box below too. Now, if you do have a carburetor with the primer bulb mounted on it, the majority of the time, like 95% of the time, if you're wanting to know which line goes to which fuel nipple, the fuel filter line always goes to the nipple farthest away from the primer bulb because it sucks the gas up through the bottom of the carburetor, goes through the carburetor, primes, goes into the primer bulb, and then returns it back into the tank. But sometimes you'll have a carburetor like off this Echo SRM 225 where the fuel nipples are right next to each other, the same distance away from the primer bulb. So what do you do then? Well, on all of these, the return line is farthest away from the cylinder. So this would be like the engine sitting right here. You've got the fuel filter sucking gas up into the carburetor, priming it through the carburetor, and returning it back to the tank. Now, if you hook everything up and you go to prime it and you have fuel pouring through your carburetor out your air filter base, you got your lines on backwards. Now, this is the same exact thing with the 4-strokes. If you come in telling me that you need a primer bulb for your Briggs & Stratton engine, I'm gonna ask you, is it cracked? And if you tell me no, but you still want one anyways, I'm gonna say, okay, which one do you want? Well, I don't know, I just want the Briggs one. Well, they have one with a hole and one without a hole. But I promise you, if it's not cracked, nothing's wrong with it. It's always something in the carburetor. Now, on most of the new Briggs engines, it's got this really fat primer bulb. I'll tell you right now, it never goes bad. A lot of you are gonna be thinking that your primer bulb is not working. It is not your issue. It is always those plastic carburetors. I do have a video on how to clean that out or replace. I will leave a link right up above. If you are replacing your Briggs & Stratton primer bulb or your Tecumseh primer bulb on an older unit, they have these little prongs that hold them in, and they got 2 little tabs that get pressed down and then hold it in place. But you'll have to remove that with your screwdriver. There's actually spots on the outside that you can press in to remove the old one. You'll put your new primer bulb in, and then you'll press that down to pop it back into place. Now, whether it is a Briggs or a Tecumseh, they both have ones with holes and without holes. Some suck and some blow. But like I said, if it doesn't have a crack, it ain't broke. But the main thing is, I don't want you to waste your money on a primer bulb that you don't need, because 90% of the time, if yours is not broken or cracked or gone, it is still working just fine, and the issue is much deeper, somewhere in your carburetor, fuel line, or fuel filter. Now, before I head out though, I do want to let you all know I was on Amazon and I saw that the Depstech HD Endoscope that everybody loves so much is on sale right now for $20 off. So if you want to go get your own, I will leave a link in the description box below. So guys, thanks for tuning back into Chickanic. If you find yourself coming back over and over again to my videos, think about hitting that subscribe button. It helps out the algorithm to make my videos shown to more people, to save them time, money, and frustration in the future. And if you haven't found me at Facebook yet, I'm getting like so close to 10,000 friends. If you would, please go over there and give me a follow at Chickanic. And guys, spring is coming. If you're fixing to pull out your pressure washer and get to cleaning, do not do it until you watch this video right here.